Hi everybody, it's Andy with True Blue Quilts. Yesterday I made a simple 9-patch block, and today I was thinking of what fun things I could do with that 9-patch block, and I decided on a dancing 9-patch. So this just takes your original block and it sets it on a little tilt or a twirl a little bit as if you're dancing around. So let me show you how I would construct that. Start with your 9-patch already sewn together, and then you're going to add borders in a log cabin style, or you can just use 2 strips on the top and then border it with the sides. But border your 9-patch block and you will end up with a nicely framed block. Of course, you could use the 9-patch like this, typical sashing type block, but I wanted to have a little bit of fun with this. So I'm going to offset my block, and I still want it to be square. So I'm going to take my large ruler and the angle really doesn't matter. Just trim off 2 sides, flip your block around and square it up. And then you will have a tilted central focus block inside your dancing sashing. And get a few of these going together and you have a dancing quilt. Your blocks dance across the quilt there, and it looks really complicated, but I found it very easy to take my straight block and just tilt that ruler to get my blocks to tilt a little bit. So I will be finishing this quilt and hopefully writing up a pattern. If you want to make your very own dancing 9-patch quilt, that would be fabulous. I'd love to see your work. So comment down below, share your photos, tag me True Blue Quilts on Instagram as we play with our 9-patch blocks and enjoy, experiment, and excel as we quilt. I've been working on a 9-patch design, and today we are going to take basic 9-patch blocks and add some borders. As you can see, the center 9-patch has been bordered in yellow fabric, and now I'm going to trim that 9-patch and make it dance. The dance comes from the tilted borders. So I've got my basic block, and I know that I want this block to end up 8.5 inches wide. So this is kind of an improvisation technique. You can't, obviously if we were trimming the block square, you would lay your ruler down straight. But I want my quilt to dance a little bit, so I'm going to offset. I've just tilted the ruler, and there is no exact science to how much of a tilt. If you just want a little gentle sway, you can do that. If you want a big dance going on there, you can tilt your ruler more to get more of a swing dance going there. I know that I need to watch my 8.5 inch lines. The other thing I want to be careful of is that I leave myself enough of an edge here next to my center block. I don't want to get into that seam allowance and have, all the border on one edge of my block. I do want my block to be centered a little bit. So I'm going to eyeball my 8.5 inch line here, make sure it's at least 1/2 inch to 3/4 away from that 8.5 inch mark on all 4 edges. And I've got at least 1 inch from all my corners there. This edge is a little closer to 3/4, but I think that will be a good size. I'm using a 12.5 inch square ruler to trim my blocks. To make this process a little bit easier, if you're trimming a lot of blocks, you may want to put some masking tape right along that 8.5 inch line, or whatever your measurement is for your blocks, to give yourself a visual. You could also cut a cardboard template or use some heavy plastic. They sell at art supply and quilting stores. Many times you can find that template plastic, and cut yourself a exact size block, and then you'd be able to adjust that. So I've got my ruler lined up. Again, this is improvisation. I'm not worried about it being exactly the same for every block. So I'm going to trim off 2 edges of my fabric. And this is another place where a rotating mat would be helpful, but I can just turn that block 180 degrees. And now I've already got my tilt built in. I just have to line up my 8.5 inch line on these 2 cut edges and trim the other 2 sides. Now these scraps are, they vary from about 1.5 inches to 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch. So you may like to use small bits like that if you're doing applique or another project that you could use some of these funky size smaller bits. Go ahead and throw those in your scrap bin, or throw them in an old pillowcase and take them to your animal shelter as a pet bed. I'm sure they'd appreciate that. So there you can see the finished dancing 9-patch block. And when it's set straight in a quilt, you can see the center 9-patch is tilted a little bit. The block itself is perfectly square, so easy to sew. Thanks for watching this tutorial on how to trim a quilt block to make it dance. Please watch all the videos in this playlist to see the construction of a full dancing 9-patch quilt. And be sure to click the subscribe button to join the True Blue Quilts community. I'll see you soon with more ways to enjoy, experiment, and excel as we quilt.